A nurse takes the edge of a bandage that has fused to raw, burned skin and rips it off in one fast pull. The young man on the bed screams. 70% of his body is covered in third-degree burns. This will happen every day for 3 years. And somewhere in that daily agony, 18-year-old Dan Ariely starts to suspect something strange, that the nurses, the experts, the people who do this for a living are wrong about his pain. Not lying. Wrong. In a way they can't even see. He begins to wonder if the specialists can be blind to something this obvious, this close, this often. Where else are we all making the same mistake over and over and never noticing? Stay to the end, and I'll show you the free lunch hiding inside that question. Here's what the nurses believed. Rip the bandage fast. Get the pain over with. Years later, Ariely ran the experiments and found the opposite. Lower intensity over a longer time actually hurts less. The people closest to the pain had it backwards. Every single patient, every single day. That's the seed of his whole life's work. Because it turns out we are not just a little irrational now and then. We are predictably irrational. We make the same mistakes, the same way, again and again. Not randomly, systematically. Which sounds like bad news. But hold on to it, because it's secretly the best news in this book. Over the next few minutes, we'll watch that pattern surface and how you value things, how you fall for the word free, how you love, how you cheat, and how it can be turned to your advantage. An ad for The Economist offered 3 choices. Web only, $59. Print only, $125. Print and web, also $125. Read that again. Who would ever pick print alone when print plus web costs the same? Nobody. It's a useless option. So why is it there? Ariely gave it to 100 students at MIT. 84 chose the expensive combo. Then he deleted the pointless middle option and ran it again. And now most people pick the cheap one. The useless choice wasn't useless at all. It was a decoy, quietly steering the crowd toward the priciest deal. Its only job was to make something next to it look like a bargain. And it worked on the smartest students in the country who never felt a thing. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us have no idea what things are actually worth. We only know what they're worth next to something else. A store puts an expensive bread machine on the shelf. Sales are flat. Then it adds a second machine, bigger and pricier. Suddenly, the first one flies off the shelf. It didn't get better. It got a neighbor that made it look reasonable. We do this everywhere. We compare our salary to our coworkers, our house to our neighbors, our life to the one glowing on the screen. In 1976, the average American CEO earned 36 times the average worker. Today, it's hundreds of times more, and still nobody feels rich because there's always a bigger number next door. The more we have, the more we want. And the only cure is to break the circle of comparison. So if value is relative, what sets the very first price? A jeweler named Salvador Asile had a problem. A harvest of strange gray-black pearls from Tahiti that nobody wanted. His first attempt to sell them failed completely, so he tried something audacious. He put them in the window of the most exclusive shop on Fifth Avenue, next to diamonds, rubies, emeralds. He ran ads pricing them beside the world's great gems, and he slapped an outrageous price on them. There was no reason these pearls were worth that, but now they sat beside things that were, and the wealthiest women in the world began wearing them around their necks. The price didn't come from the pearls, it came from what he stood them next to. He didn't discover their value, he invented it. And once a price lands in your mind, it sticks, even a completely random one. Ariely proved it with a game that shouldn't work. He showed students bottles of wine, chocolates, a computer keyboard. First, he had each person write down the last 2 digits of their social security number, just random noise. Then he asked them to bid. The people whose digits happened to be high, say 89, bid 3 times more for the exact same keyboard than people whose digits were low. A number that meant nothing, that they knew meant nothing, silently reached in and set what they were willing to pay. He called it arbitrary coherence. The first number is arbitrary, but every number after it lines up neatly behind. You think you're deciding what something's worth. An accident is doing it for you. Now here's the force that turns all of us into children. Ariely set out a bowl of chocolates, a fancy Lindt truffle for 15 cents, and an ordinary Hershey's Kiss for 1 cent. Most people did the sensible thing and bought the good truffle. Then he changed both prices by exactly 1 penny. The truffle, 14 cents. The kiss, free. Nothing about the deal really changed. The truffle was still the better chocolate for the money. But the moment that kiss hit zero, the crowd stampeded. Most people abandoned the truffle and grabbed the free candy. Zero, it turns out, is not just another price. Zero is an emotional hot button. It flips off the part of your brain that weighs costs and benefits because free feels like there's no way to lose. That's the trap, which is why free shipping can outsell actually saving money. Now leave money behind entirely because we secretly live in two worlds. In the world of social norms, you help a friend move, you bring a dish to Thanksgiving, and nobody pays anybody. In the world of market norms, everything has a price, and these two worlds must never touch. Ariely asked retired lawyers to give some cheap legal help to needy families, $30 an hour. Almost all of them said no. Then he asked a different group to do the same work for free. Almost all of them said yes. Take that in. They do for nothing what they refuse to do for $30. The moment you name a price, generosity becomes a transaction, and a small price feels insulting. This is why asking your mother, "What do I owe you for dinner?" is a catastrophe. Money is often the most expensive way to motivate people. And once you cross that line, you can't cross back. A group of daycare centers had a problem with parents picking up their kids late, so they did the rational thing. They added a fine. What happened? Late pickups didn't go down. They went up. Before the fine, being late meant guilt. You'd looked a tired teacher in the eye and felt terrible. The fine erased the guilt and put a price tag on lateness instead. Now parents thought, it's just a few dollars, worth it. A moral rule became a cheap service they could buy. But here's the part that should frighten you. The centers saw their mistake and removed the fine. The lateness stayed high. Once a relationship becomes a transaction, it rarely turns back into a relationship. Some bridges only burn one way. Every rule we've seen so far, you break while calm. This next one, you break while on fire. Ask a person in a cool, rational state to predict how they'll behave in the heat of desire, or anger, or fear, and they'll answer honestly and be completely wrong. Ariely and a colleague ran a careful study measuring people's judgment in a calm state versus a highly aroused one. The gap was staggering. Choices they swore they'd never make, lines they were certain they'd never cross, moved dramatically once emotion took the wheel. The calm you is a stranger to the heated you, and the calm you keeps underestimating him. It's Jekyll writing rules that Hyde will happily ignore, which means the plan you make in a quiet moment isn't really a plan for the person who'll show up in the storm, and knowing that changes how you should protect yourself from yourself. So how do you defeat a version of yourself you can't reason with? Ariely tested it on his own students. 3 classes, 3 sets of rules. One class got firm deadlines spaced across the term. Another got total freedom. One deadline, at the very end, do the work whenever. The third was allowed to set their own deadlines and choose their own penalties for missing them. Guess who did worst? The class with total freedom. Left to our own devices, we swear we'll start early, and then we don't, again and again, until it's a panic at 3 a.m. The students who did best were the ones with firm deadlines imposed on them, and the free group who chose to lock themselves in did nearly as well. The trick isn't willpower. It's tying your own hands before the storm hits, pre-committing, while you're still calm enough to mean it. Now watch what happens the instant you own something. At Duke, basketball tickets are so scarce students camp in tents for days, then enter a lottery. So Ariely called students who just won a ticket and students who just lost, same tents, same devotion, separated only by luck. He asked the losers, "What would you pay to buy a ticket?" About $175. He asked the winners, "What would you sell yours for?" About $2,400, 14 times higher for the identical ticket. Overnight, owning it had transformed what it was worth. We fall in love with what's ours. We feel its loss far more than its gain. It's why you can't bear to sell the old car, why you overprice the house, why the free trial is so dangerous. The moment it's yours, letting go feels like losing a piece of yourself. And we'll pay dearly just to keep a door from closing. Ariely built a simple computer game. 3 doors, click 1, earn money in the room behind it. The smart move is obvious. Find the best room and stay. But he added a twist. Any door you ignored slowly began to shrink and would eventually vanish for good. Suddenly, people panicked. They raced back and forth, clicking doors just to keep them alive, burning real money to preserve options they were never going to use. They earned far less than the people who simply picked a room and stayed. 23 centuries ago, a general named Xiang Yu marched his army across a river and burned his own boats. So retreat was impossible and won. We do the opposite. We keep every boat, every door, every maybe, and we exhaust ourselves guarding exits we'll never take. Here's where it gets unsettling, because expectation doesn't just bend your choices, it bends your senses. Ariely offered people free beer with a secret ingredient, a couple of drops of balsamic vinegar. One group was told before they sipped. They winced, disgusting. Another group tasted the same beer and only heard about the vinegar afterward. They loved it and asked for more. Same liquid. The only difference was a sentence spoken beforehand, and it literally changed the flavor on their tongue. Tell someone a wine is expensive and they enjoy it more. Put coffee in an elegant cup and it tastes richer. When people sip Coke and Pepsi blind, the brain responds to both. But flash the Coca-Cola logo, and a whole different region lights up and tips the scale. You don't just taste the drink, you taste what you believe about the drink. And nowhere is that belief more powerful or more profitable than in medicine. Ariely gave volunteers a brand new painkiller called Villadone, then delivered carefully measured electric shocks. Told the pill cost $2.50, almost everyone reported real relief. Then he told another group the same pill had been discounted to 10 cents. Now only half felt better. Same pill. There was no medicine in it at all. It was a vitamin capsule. The price was the medicine. This is the placebo effect wearing a price tag. A 50-cent aspirin can beat a 1-cent aspirin, not because it works better, but because we believe it does. And belief reaches down and changes what the body actually feels. It's wonderful and it's terrifying. The story we're told about a thing quietly rewrites our experience of it, even our pain. So we misjudge value, free, love, ourselves, even our own senses. Surely we're honest? Ariely handed people a simple math test and paid them for each correct answer. One group turned in their sheets normally. Another group got to shred the evidence and just report their score. When people could cheat with zero chance of being caught, they cheated. But only a little. Not wildly, just a few extra points each. Almost nobody grabbed everything, even when they easily could have. We're not split into saints and crooks. We're nearly all a little bit crooked, willing to bend the rules just enough to gain, while still feeling like a good person. And most disturbing of all, raising or lowering the odds of getting caught barely move the numbers. The thing holding us honest isn't the fear of punishment. It's something much quieter. So what does stop us? Ariely ran the cheating test again, but first, he asked one group to recall the 10 Commandments. Not to follow them, just to remember as many as they could, then take the test. That group didn't cheat at all. Zero. A faint whisper of morality, right before temptation, shut it down completely. Then he pushed further. He had students sign a line agreeing they were bound by an honor code at MIT, which has no honor code. Meaningless. And cheating vanished again. It isn't surveillance that keeps us honest. It's being reminded at the exact right moment of who we're trying to be. A tiny nudge to conscience does what the threat of getting caught cannot, which means honesty isn't a fixed trait you have or lack. It's a state, and the world around you is quietly turning it up or down. But there's a crack in that honesty, and it's wider than you'd think. Ariely slipped 6 cans of Coke into a shared dorm fridge. Within 72 hours, every can was gone. Then he left a plate of 6 $1 bills, the exact same value, in the same fridge. Not a single dollar was taken. Nobody steals cash. But a Coke? A pen from the office? Somehow that's fine. So he tested the edge. In the cheating game, when people cheated for actual money, they nudged. But when they cheated for plastic tokens, worthless chips they'd trade for identical cash seconds later, cheating exploded. One tiny step away from real money, and our conscience goes quiet. This is the most dangerous idea in the book, because almost nothing we touch anymore is cash. It's cards, points, stock options, expense accounts, a whole world one convenient step removed from the money. Now, a moment of honesty about the honesty studies, because this is where you should trust the story more, not less. Ariely is careful to say these experiments are illustrations of how our minds tend to work, not iron laws, and he doesn't claim to have all the answers, and he's right to hedge. In the years since this book, some of these findings, the moral reminder cheating results especially, have been harder for other scientists to reproduce than anyone hoped, and the field of behavioral economics has had a real reckoning about which effects truly hold. So take these clever experiments as they're meant, not as proof of exactly how much you'll cheat or pay, but as a flashlight pointed at a real and humbling truth. The direction is solid, even where the exact numbers wobble. We are biased in patterned ways. The science of measuring precisely how much is still, honestly, a work in progress. Now step back and look at everything you've walked through. The decoy that steered you, the random number that priced you, the word free that hijacked you, the price that named your generosity, the heat that overrode your rules, the door you couldn't close, the belief that flavored your beer and dulled your pain, the token that loosened your conscience. Notice the shape. Every single one is the same story, a hidden force, an invisible current, and you, certain you were steering, when really you were being steered, not randomly, the same way, in the same direction, again and again, across strangers and geniuses, and even the researcher himself. This is what Ariely means by predictably irrational. The mistakes aren't personal failings. They're built into the wiring, which finally brings us to the twist he's been promising all along. Here's the gift buried inside all of it. If our mistakes were random, we'd be helpless. You can't defend against chaos. But they're not random. They're predictable. And anything predictable can be planned for. That's what Ariely calls a free lunch. Once you can see a mistake coming, you can redesign the moment so the mistake never happens. If people won't save money, don't lecture them. Build a plan where their savings quietly rise every time they get a raise, so it never feels like loss. One program did exactly that and pushed people's saving rates from 3% to more than 13%. Nobody got wiser. The choice got redesigned. That's the whole move. You don't have to become a perfectly rational being. You just have to know where the trap is and set the table so you never step in it. Which takes us back to that hospital bed and a teenager in agony realizing the experts were confidently, invisibly wrong. That's every one of us, most days. Sure, we're choosing freely, while hidden forces do the choosing. The rational human we pretend to be doesn't quite exist. But that's not the sad ending. It's the door out. Because the moment you stop assuming you're rational, you can finally start watching for the current, the decoy, the anchor, the word free, the token in place of cash. You'll still feel the pull, but now you'll see it coming. And that's the quiet power of this book. Our errors happen again and again, which is exactly why, at last, we can see them coming. If this rewired how you think about your own choices, the next one to watch is Daniel Kahneman's Thinking, Fast and Slow, the two fast hidden minds running the show behind your eyes.